Right. Good evening, all you guys, gals, and non-binary pals. This is Aaron, and I'm here with another installment of that D&D podcast, Improbable Interviews. Before we go ahead and introduce our special guest, we will go around our small virtual table and introduce ourselves, so you know who's asking the questions in this interrogation. So since I'm already talking, hi, I'm Aaron. Pronouns are she, her, and
I'll go. Hi. Hi, I'm Zach. He, him. I play a lot of games around here and have been here for a lot of these interviews, and I've enjoyed myself. So I'm looking forward to this one for sure.
I'm Renee. I'm a she. And I think this is my first interview. I've played a number of campaigns with the podcast, and I am the behind-the-scenes editor-in-chief. I don't know that that's woohoo, but that's a thing.
It's accurate. It's accurate.
Here I am.
Every title that exists on this podcast we have made and taken for ourselves. That's why I have like 11 of them, because I just chose for it to be so. So,
nice.
Congratulations, Editor-in-Chief.
Editor-in-Chief.
Editrix.
See, I have to say, as much as I dislike gender disparity, I do like the X ending for female nouns, like Atrix and Editrix. It's really fun. It sounds way cooler than just editor.
Mm-hmm.
What
to do with that.
That tricks right in there.
That should have been your stage name for the album cover.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. There you go. Okay, you're right.
That sounds like you make EDM though, right? Like that's.
The headphones are on there. I mean, why not?
It's true. So I need someone to teach me how to drop the bass.
You pick it up and you put it down really fast.
Okay.
Okay, before we get too far off on a tangent.
And with the inside jokes that we developed in the 10 minutes that we were talking before we went live.
We're 2 minutes into the interview and we are off the rails. Congratulations.
Ding, achievement unlocked.
Basically, we speed ran a this what do you call it when a train falls off the thing?
Derailment?
Jesus, I can't words. This is going to be great. Tracy,
Derailment speed run.
Why don't you introduce yourself to the audience while I figure out how words happen?
Hi, I'm Tracy Barnett. I am a writer, game designer, general person in the world. Pronouns are they and them. And I'm happy to be here on the show. This is exciting.
Well, thank you first off for coming on. We meant to get you on way long time ago. Scheduling things happened. I'm glad we can finally make the paths cross. We crossed the street.
Yeah, and I mean that's honestly the timing of this from a purely marketing perspective is a little bit better because the new Kickstarter is coming in like a week and a half if everything aligns properly. So I'm sure we'll discuss that more. But yeah,
absolutely. So looking at your Twitter and all the various things that you've posted, you're on another podcast, right?
I run another podcast. Yeah, I created and GM for and edit an actual play podcast called The Other Cast, which is a riff on my internet handle, The Other Tracy. And it started with just a Star Wars Edge of the Empire game. I had published actual play audio sort of unedited before in life, but I'd never really said, yes, I'm going to do this podcast thing. And so I had recorded some of the early sessions with a little Olympus digital voice recorder, in the middle of the table inside of a glass cup with a handkerchief around it. So it wouldn't pick up table vibration as much. And I decided that I was going to start this podcast. So I used that audio to start with. And then I foolishly 6 months later added 2 additional shows. And then when the Star Wars game ran out, when we finished it, we started a Dresden Files game. And then I also started an Iron Edda game. So up until about a month or so ago, I was editing 4 half-hour episodes a week, or 2 1-hour episodes every other week, which is the same amount of work. It's just spread out a little bit more. Life circumstances have sort of put the show on pause for a little bit. It would be a month ago this past Sunday, my now fiance proposed to me. Fantastic. That evening, thank you very much. That evening, she slipped at a friend's housewarming party and broke her tibia, fibula, and ankle bone, and had to have emergency surgery the next day. So, like, everything has gotten thrown into this weird suspended animation state when it comes to the work that I do by choice, right? Which the podcast very much is.
Right.
Yeah. So we haven't had a gaming session in about a month. I haven't edited any audio in a month. And it's been fine. I needed a chance to sort of step back and go, okay, I know this is too much. Like, what I'm trying to do is more work than I can handle. What's that going to look like?
Yeah.
Like, what is sustainable going forward? So the plan is probably going to be to drop it down to 2 games on the feed, do the much more reasonable release schedule of 1 game every other week, and do, like, the first week of the month will be game A and the third week of the month will be game B. And if they go a little bit over an hour long when I'm editing things down, that's fine. I want to try and aim for the Neo Scum model of, we played a 4-hour session, let's make it an hour-ish of audio, and keep everything contained and not get a massive backlog. Like, I currently, for the D&D game that we have going, I probably have 7, maybe 8 sessions worth of audio that have not been touched that are ready to go on the feed.
I feel like you're an alternate reality version of us.
Right?
Because, like, we started with 4E, and then we branched out into, was it Dresden Files, Star Wars, Dungeon World, 13th Age, Apocalypse World. We just started Burning Wheel, and it's one of those things.
So many.
Yeah, it started out, it was just me editing the audio while I was at work, because I used to work at the Department of Corrections, a whole lot of downtime. Like 32 hours a week, I was editing audio. That's how I taught myself how to edit audio. Luckily, Renee has been
Yeah, and one of my players has actually offered to edit the D&D game. It's that campaign is the one that I'm not running. So we were playing it well before the podcast was even an idea, and then we took a break from it and came back after about 1.5 years. And at that point in time, we were doing the podcast. So the question was, do we want this to be on the feed? We all decided yes. And we did this really cool thing. In game, our characters had been away from their home city for 1.5 years. And we hadn't been playing in real life for 1.5 years. So we did a brief, like, 20-minute primer on, here's the setting we came up with, here's what's going on. And then we didn't explain a damn thing after that. We just picked up with our session, and as our characters remembered things from 1.5 years ago, and as our players remembered things from the exact same time gap,
then it kind of does it for the audience too.
we could be like, oh yeah, you remember that time when it's like how Dragonlance, the novels start, right? Into the Last Home. It's been 5 years. Here's all this shared history, but they don't just, like, there's no exposition to just dump that all on you all at the front. So it's been a really cool way to see our own backstory unfold for both ourselves and the audience, because at a certain level, we're our own audience, because we all don't remember what the hell happened. Right? It's been 1.5 years. So we're like, who is that guy that... And then when the GM has done a couple of flashback things where, like, you're in a dream and this thing is happening, because we're level 15 and it's D&D, so we're now trying to kill a god, because that's what you do. And yeah, exactly. And so we had a flashback to, like, our first major fight in the campaign, and we were all remembering how it went originally and trying to keep the same outcomes from happening again. It was really cool. So yeah, he will, if I can figure out finally what I want the format to look like, how I want to do, like, the intro and music and breaks and things like that, because I've been toying with all that stuff for the last 1.5 years until I have found something that works. I may ask him to take over the editing of that, so that will mean that I am down to only having to edit 1 session a month. which would be nice.
Yeah,
I would enjoy that quite a bit. Yeah, as opposed to, I can carve out 6 hours, 7, and sit down and edit one session and like do it right and get it all the way I want it, which is much easier than trying to do that for 4 games a week.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's it's so much. It's so much, and I didn't mean to do that to myself, but I have a really bad habit of feeling like I'm not having enough impact with the projects that I am currently undertaking. So rather than focusing down and really trying to do those things better, I add more.
Mm-hmm.
And it leads to collapse every single time. Like something ends up giving every time.
Yep.
Every time I do that. So I'm really trying to actually learn the lesson this time and figure out where my limits are and do not work to them. Leave myself a little bit of buffer. So like I'm still working effectively. Like 85% output is really good.
Yeah.
And I can go to 100 or push it harder than that if I need to. But if I can do good work by not killing myself trying to give 100% all the time, I'm not Deadpool. Maximum effort doesn't get me everything.
Right.
Like then I think that's a much more sustainable way to function. Especially given that the return on investment in the stupid capitalist society we live in for writing games and for editing actual play podcasts is so minuscule, comparatively speaking. It has to be something you're passionate about. It has to be something you're doing because you want to do it. And if it ever turns on you and becomes a burden, if it becomes something you have to do, that's kind of an ugly place to be, because the rest of the world is shouting at you that you should be making more than you're doing, you should be doing more than what you're doing, you should be better than you are right now. And you want to do that, but you've got bills to pay and you've got rent that's due and you have pets to feed. And it's really sad to like have something you love become a burden because you can't profit off of it.
Yeah.
So I would really rather not run into that particular obstacle if I can help it. In so much as that it's possible to avoid it in the world anyway. But I'd rather do these things because I love to do them and put what I can into them without knocking myself over.
Fun fact for everybody at home: capitalism.
What?
It
You can't be serious.
It blows big donkey dick. It's so bad. Like I had this realization, and this is like, I'm 37. Maybe I should have figured this out sooner, but I was at Origins a couple of weeks ago here in Columbus, and I thought about the amount of work that goes into publishing an RPG, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to have so much time and energy invested in into RPGs in general, right? You have to know mechanics, you have to know fiction and narrative pacing, right? You have to take an idea that you've got and distill it down into something that other people can use, right? So you are doing creative writing, you're doing technical writing, you're doing self-editing. If you're playtesting the game, then you are doing presentation and public speaking. You are doing like essentially training and teaching if you're having people learn mechanics. Then to get the game out, assuming that you're not a one-stop shop like a John Harper, and even if you are, you're doing art and you're doing layout, or you're doing project coordination for people who are artists and who are layout artists and graphic designers. So you're doing project management no matter what. And then if you want to have it go out into the world in a form people can consume, then you're doing distribution and fulfillment, and you're doing marketing. And all of these things are things that in almost any venue aside from RPGs, and I get the creative arts in general are like this a lot, but people get paid a lot of money to do any one of those things well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe not writing, unfortunately. I have a bone to pick with that too. But like RPGs, and by extension, a lot of creative work, is so ill-suited for a capitalist venture.
Mm-hmm.
RPGs especially, because the idea that to have a thing function the way it's supposed to is that one person needs to buy a book at minimum and convince 4 of their friends to take 4 hours out of their life on a weekly or bi-weekly basis to do a thing that inherently leaves no artifact that it existed aside from the shared experience. There's not art that is generated because of it. There is not writing that is generated because of it inherently, unless the game includes those things. So you have all of these things. You are literally trying to get people to take time to have an experience together. And all you have to do that is sell a single book.
Mm-hmm.
At its core, maybe some dice. How the fuck is that supposed to be a sustainable thing when it comes to making money?
Mm-hmm.
The fact that even Wizards of the Coast has figured out ways to make that happen and to grow the hobby and to have people continue to buy books and supplements and setting books is mind-boggling.
Right.
Because this is a venture that shouldn't work. It shouldn't function in our society. And then there are people who are in the same boat as me who would love more than anything to have this be what they do. Mm-hmm. Day in, day out, to do things like this, to talk with people like you all, to make weird little niche games that 5 people are going to get and play, and also be able to have a roof over their head and so on and so forth. And it is one of the most disheartening realities of game design to contend with that. And I'm saying that as someone who has run 7 successful Kickstarters to publish games. I've done that part of things. I'm really bad at it. I'm exceedingly bad at it. At this point in time, I have either, with the exception of one set of stretch goals for Carthoon, which we're working on, I've either badly finished the publishing process and made poor decisions to the tune of 1,000 extra copies of 2 books sitting in my basement right now.
Wow.
Or I have gotten contracts with other publishers to help me finish these projects because I can't do it on my own. I've learned this. I might be better at it now than I was 4 years ago when I thought I was invincible and could take on the world. But all of this is really, really hard work. And it feels like it should be something. It feels like there's enough value in it that it should be something that we're allowed to do and make a living off of. But the highest word rate that I've ever been paid for a job is 6 cents a word. And that's from Paizo for freelance writing for Starfinder. If I wanted to make $40,000 a year off, I would have to write a little over 100,000 words a year. Most game books are not that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
The work I've done for Paizo is 3,600 words a pop.
Yeah.
So if you factor all of that out and keep it just to 5 days a week, so you can assume that you might have weekends to do some things, you have to write for a paying outlet a little less than 2,700 words a day.
Yeah.
And that is a decent output for a professional fiction writer. Right. Yeah. That is a seasoned writer's daily writing target. Yeah. Is 25 to 3,000 words a day. 2,500 to 3,000. So I didn't mean to get all gloom and doom about this. It's just that's that reality, especially with all of the other fucking shit going on in America right now, is so depressing. It's one more depressing reality among everything else. However, the sort of thread that runs through all this is I'm not going to fucking stop doing it, I guess. So let's find a way to circle it all the way back around I need to find a way that I can do it without draining every mental and emotional resource I have to the point of bankruptcy.
Well, I mean, I think it's one of those things where, not that it was a more equitable solution, but you kind of understand why artists and writers in the past, had patrons. Because then at least you don't have to, it's like, okay, I do this painting for you, and then I can do my thing over here, and you don't have to worry about the daily grind. Like, I get why people were into that system, because it at least provides you some stability, as long as you kiss the right ass and do the thing.
Well, and so like that patron model, right? Like, I love Patreon for that. It's a really cool thing. The fact of the matter, at least with our society right now, is that there's this joke about creatives sharing the same dollar around in a circle until it comes back, because like, I want to support people on Patreon, but I can only support about $7 a month worth of things.
Yeah.
And a couple of those people that I support on Patreon also support me on Patreon. So really all we're doing is exchanging the same money back and forth every month. It feels good. It feels really cool. Like, I'm really happy that the Patreon for the other cast is at like $76 a month. Half of that is my players in the podcast. Like, no joke. It's the people who are on the show with me who are also putting in labor to make this thing. But like, I think the thing that, and I alluded to this before with the idea that I just keep adding projects. The thing that is a constant sticking point for me is that I don't focus on things well. I don't do a thing until that thing is done, then I do something else. I'm continually thinking about what will come next, and my brain is just continually trying to go down a bunch of different possible roads and see which one has gold at the end of it. And so with something like the podcast, it doesn't help to have more shows on the feed. What would have helped would have been to maybe add one more show and then really focus in, or not even that, but maybe just focus in on what I was doing and learn how to do that thing better. Like, get better at editing the audio, get better at cutting in music and sound effects and whatever else I decided to do, to the point where people who like that type of thing would go, yes, that's a thing I want to support. As it is right now, I've fired a shotgun out, and tiny little pellets are hitting little targets, but like, I need to load a slug into the fucker and blow a big hole. So I guess that's the lesson I'm continually trying to learn is where are my limits and what can I do to focus on things better and not just be so scattershot. Because it turns out, when you try to make every creative thing you do into a money generating thing, you get little blibs and blobs of support, but you don't get any community built up around that, and you don't get a whole lot of real engagement. And that's something else that I've struggled with, is I have no idea how to form a community or even really how to give back to one. I'm inherently a really selfish person. And so I'm trying to work from the mindset of, okay, here are the big projects I have to work on. I can functionally work on 2 large game designs at a time. Like, that's my project limit. I'm working with other publishers on the stuff that I've got going on right now. So if I have another little idea, I'm just going to develop it out in public and publish it for free. I'm not going to try to make it a thing with a capital T. I'm just going to say, here's a game. If you want it, go for it. Enjoy. If you like it, tell me about it. I'd appreciate that. And leave it at that, because not everything needs to be the next big thing. Sometimes an idea just needs to get out of your head in a semi-functional form, and you need to put it into the world to let people do what they will with it. And you need to be available to talk to people about it if they're interested. Not just continually be trying to pump people for money.
Yeah, I feel like that's always like, it's always that weird balance. Because I mean, like, we've got a Patreon, but I mean, really all we pay for right now server hosting, roll 20, and everything after that. We try to put into like supporting a bunch of indie people by buying games where we can. But then you come to the point where it's okay. We're already making money. Do we plug the Patreon at the end of the podcast, like get more money that we don't know what to do with that we can maybe redistribute? But then if we do that, why don't we just direct people straight to the other person, like feature person? I don't know what to do, basically.
Yeah, no, it's a tough thing, and in a situation like y'all's where you've got a following and people want to support that following, then yeah, I think that like redirecting money into other Patreons and being like that silent supporter in addition to having people on is a fine thing, because if you hamstring your own account or your own platform, if you will, by like saying, yeah, no, don't support us, go support those people over there, like that's counterintuitive to a lot of folks. Like, well, but I really like you, why can't I support you? You'll have Kira McGran on like you did a couple of weeks ago, like you're gonna talk to all these awesome people. I don't know, it's tricky. It's all tricky. It all sucks. We should just have a basic, income that everyone gets when they turn 18 and universal health care. And then we would just get to not be stressed about this. And the tone of this conversation wouldn't have to be verging between passionate and desperate.
Yeah, the desperation.
which is where I feel like I am right now. And I kind of want to swing away from the desperation side of things.
It's a hell of a situation, just in general. And I mean, I agree with all of the work is dumb, and like it should be, you should be able to go and do a thing you're passionate about. I feel like people should be more free to see the world, take in things, pursue creative endeavors, spend time caring for each other. You can't do that when you have to spend the prime 8 hours of your day sitting in a box waiting for a progress bar. It sucks.
In my previous job, I was talking to someone there about the idea of a universal basic income, and her response was, well, but wouldn't people just be getting paid to do nothing? And my answer was, yeah, if that's what they want to do. Like, what is so offensive about the idea of not working that we think enabling it is so bad? Like,
we are so continually inundated with the legacy of Puritanism and this idea that labor in and of itself is some type of blessed good that everyone needs to participate in, which is really funny because like the really rich people at that time didn't really work either. So
yeah, they invented tennis. Like that's like they spent their time doing that stuff instead.
That took a lot of playtests and revisions.
Tennis is work.
It used to be work. Do you ever see the pants they had to wear to play that in? Yeah, no, I think, and I've been following you on Twitter, and
I'm sorry. Wait. Let me walk that back. Self-deprecation doesn't do anybody.
You also saw that, didn't you? Yeah.
Yes. I hope that my constant swinging back and forth between excited game ideas and, oh God, the political situation in the U.S. is a dumpster fire has not been too jarring for you.
Oh,
we are all there. We are all in that same place.
I feel like we could slot you perfectly into most conversations we have on our Discord, because it's like, oh my God, look at this game coming out. Can you believe what this fucking politician did? Okay, but look at this game. Look at the cool shiny dice. This dude's trying to make everybody. What? Oh no, my phone just lit up. I think Google telling me.
What did you
continue. I have to figure out what's happening.
Oh no, we just swung. We just swang towards that. No, like my Twitter feed, no one follows me. Like nobody follows me. But it's basically just like rage and games. And games. But yeah, like and a lot of the questions I'd written up were about this sort of thing, because you've talked about a fair amount on Twitter. Like, is a full-time game designer just a media manager with a hobby? I remember was one sort of conversation that was had. We have had a couple of folks on Fraser Simon specifically jumps to mind about that are people who are trying to make a go of it full time, like just stepping into that world.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish them the best of luck. I really hope it works out for them. It seems like it's going to be very hard.
Yeah. The idea of doing game design full time is a super appealing one. Like, if all I had to do all day was sit around and like actually just type some stuff for games, get ideas out on paper, and make games, that would be ideal. But anyone who wants to do a creative thing full time will tell you that it's so much more than that, right? Like I mentioned before, all the different disciplines that go into it. Like, I'm happy to be learning to do different things most of the time. Like, most of the time I'm like, cool, there's a thing I want to do with this graphic. I am not a graphic designer. I have zero background in visual arts. I now know my way around Photoshop enough to be dangerous with it. So, like, I can make things. My visual eye is getting a little bit better. There's always going to be more to learn, but I'm happy about that. Except when a time comes where it's like, well, no, there's a thing that's sort of vaguely in my head, but I have no idea how to get it out into this, and I spend 5 hours wrangling until I get a mess, right? And that sort of thing can crop up in any part of this. And when you start talking about it from a professional standpoint, like, I thought when I kickstarted the original Ironetta now 4 years ago, it was January of 2014 when that launched. It raised just shy of $20,000, and I was like, "Holy shit! I raised almost $20,000 for a thing that I want to make. This is amazing." I was keeping costs low, like I had money left over. I thought everything was going to be grand. And then slowly over time, I remembered that I'm horrible at managing money. I am horrible at managing expenses. I feel like it's always going to be there until it's not, and I'm scrambling to fill it in. So, like, there were bad cycles that just kept going and going because there were parts of doing this that I had completely not anticipated how difficult they were going to be to do. Doing a sustained marketing push for an RPG, oh my God. Like, just that alone, like, not hitting your design enough, like being comfortable enough with the creative thing that you're making, to constantly be going, okay, it's super awesome, you need to check it out, when you're like, okay, this thing is some kind of cross between a troll and a bullywug, and I think it does what it's supposed to do, but good God, I don't know that anyone has ever played it, so how am I supposed to really know that? And yes, people gave me a bunch of money to make this thing, but what does that mean? That doesn't mean anything. Like, all the insecurity and the self-doubt was absolutely paralyzing. And so I kept surging forward. I'm like, okay, well, I'll do another project, right? Because of course I can't focus on anything. So I kickstarted Dead Scare. That turned into one of the worst experiences I've had as a professional in the industry, just because I could not manage my own expectations throughout the situation. At pretty much every part of that project I handled poorly. And it is now going to be off of my plate. Someone else is going to be helping me finish it up. I'm waiting for them to make that announcement, and that's all I'm going to say about that. But, like, I'm very happy to have someone more capable taking what I think is an amazing game, an amazing idea by a really good designer, and giving it what it deserves, because I couldn't do that. I thought I could. I thought I could real hard. But the little engine that could rolled about 3/4 of the way up the hill and just got stuck. And then slid backwards and derailed and crashed and burned in a number of ways. But the people back at the train station were like, no, let's just send another one up the hill, right? Like that's the metaphor. No, just ignore the burning wreckage as you're going by. Everything's fine here. We're fine. We're all fine. How are you? So that's where I've been with every project until recently. Brian, my creative partner Brian Patterson and I were together. We were Exploding Rogue Studios. We kickstarted Carthoon, the idea he had been working on as a campaign setting since he was 10 years old. Right, his dream was to get it done. By the end of that process, he had nearly worked himself to death, quite literally, getting all the art done for the book. We had to bring the content back and add more to it twice because our page estimates were so far off that we promised as a stretch goal a 320-page book, right? And we used estimations of how many words fit on the average page of an 8.5 by 11 book, so on and so forth. We gave it to our layout guy, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm at 186."
Oh no!
And I'm like, "The what? You're where now?" So we brought it back and added an entire section for magic items. Right? I'm at 242. Fuck, seriously?
How do you feel about
we brought it back. We added monsters and other threats. I'm at 298. Fucking good enough. Because it was a torturous process to think that you're done with a thing and then to have to bring it back and do something more with it and then bring it back and then do something more with it because your own poor estimation got you where you are, right? And that's like reflective of what this entire process has been like for me. I've learned so much doing it. I think that if the idea of trying to publish something myself again didn't scare the ever-loving piss out of me, that I could probably do much better at it than I did before. That having been said, we're finally entering a time in tabletop RPGs where there are some, very few, but some publishers who want to solicit pitches for game ideas, and not just for complete games, right? Like Evil Hat picked up Blades in the Dark from John. Fantastic pairing, right? It's a match made in heaven. But there are some publishers who want to not just publish a thing, but give you support throughout the entire creative process. So that's what IronNet Accelerated has been with Encoded Designs.
Cool.
A year or so ago, actually it was last year's Origins, over email and such, I pitched them the idea of a new version of Ironetta because I felt like the game, I did not do it justice, both creatively and business-wise the first time around, right? I really am proud of what I published. I thought it could be better. So I pitched them the idea. They really liked it. And from then on, Phil Vecchione was my project manager, right? So he would check in with me every week and say, "Okay, how's it going? Where's the draft? What have you gotten done this week?" By the time September rolled around and I was at Big Bad Con, I had written 6 pre-gens, which I somehow wrote in some kind of sleep-deprived fugue state on the flight out to LA, or out to San Francisco. To LA, and then it was a connection to San Francisco. By the time I got to those playtests at Big Bad Con, I did not remember what I had written. Like, I handed out the sheets to people, and every time they said, "Okay, I'm going to do a thing," I'm like, "Okay, what? Can you hand me your sheet? What is that? What's that thing?" There was a moment, because I was playtesting something else at the time too, which I had also written under similar conditions, and the form fillable fields on the PDF had not saved the text I had put in on the airplane. So I get to this barbarian archetype that I'd written, and the person's like, "Oh, so it doesn't say anything in this box. Do you know what's supposed to go in there?" And I looked at it, and I had no recollection of what I had written on the plane even be able to approach answering that question. That was a really rough weekend. Big Bad Con is a fantastic convention. I was sick. I actually I realized when I got home that I had bronchitis. So I was sick. I was jet lagged from the flight out. This was during the fires, so everything was smoky there too.
Right.
And I was play testing 2 brand new things for the first time ever. I got the so Big Bad Con does a really good job of giving you feedback. They do surveys of everyone who plays in every session, and if you want that information from them, Sean Nittner is very happy to provide it. Out of 10 for my Ironetta games and for the other thing, I think I got a 6.5 out of 10 and a 5.5 out of 10 as a GM. Player ratings, right? It was bad. I did a bad job, guys. I did a really, really bad job. If anyone is watching this or sees this who played in one of those games at Big Bad Con, I am so sorry. I let you down so hard. I gave you such a substandard time. Wow. I really apologize. And what's really funny about that is that about 2 months later, I was at a Catacon, which is in Dayton, Ohio, just about an hour away from here. And I ran 2 sessions of Ironetta Accelerated, and I had 2 of the best gaming sessions that I had ever had as a GM of Ironetta. And it was the same new design that I had at Big Bad Con. But there was some value in those poor experiences at Big Bad Con. I was able to, so I wrote Ironetta 4 years ago, even longer than that. I started writing it in 2013. I kickstarted it in 2014. I've been running it at conventions since then. And the original Fate Core version of Ironetta at that point in time, to me, was like riding a bike, right? It was super familiar. I knew how to turn all the knobs and adjust all the dials to make the tone and the feel and all the things happen right at the table, and it was great. What I realized at Big Bad Con is that the differences between the original Ironetta and Ironetta Accelerated were just different enough that it was like trying to drive a car that you're really familiar with, but all of the stuff on the dashboard and the turn signal and the gear shift, they're all in slightly different places. Right? Like you go to turn on the windshield wipers and instead the headlights are on. Right? You go to adjust the AC and suddenly AC/DC is playing on the radio. Like it's and it was really jarring for me. Like it made me feel like I'd fucked up. Because I was like, well, this thing that's super familiar to me isn't what I thought it was. What's going on? But those experiences I think I had to get those out of the way. If I hadn't gone through that, then I don't think that I could have learned where all of the things were. Right? I don't think that I could have I don't think that I could have had those experiences at a Catacon if I hadn't completely biffed it at Big Bad Con, right? I needed to sit down with it at some point in time and go, oh shit, the shifter is on the steering column and not down on in the center console. I really kind of wish that I hadn't done that when I was a guest of honor at a really awesome gaming convention. Like I wish I would have done that, I don't know, at home with people who didn't pay money to play in my games. But you can't change the past, and it is what it is. And I really, really like where Ironetta Accelerated is now as a game. Like it feels like the game that I have wanted Ironetta to be the entire time. And I'm really, really excited that Encoded Designs wanted to do that partnership and that they're handling all the heavy lifting. I don't have to do any project management with this. All I had to do was write and playtest the game. Like I'm going to review the Kickstarter text soon and help them like polish it up, but that's it. Like they're handling the publication, they're handling the Kickstarter, the marketing. I get paid for my words. I'm getting royalties on the back end once things start selling. It's that right there is the model that I want to keep following. if I can. And I hope more RPG publishers find that that's a sustainable way for them to do business.
Yeah.
Because I have a similar setup with Galileo Games for a game called Valkyries that I'm working on, and I like it feels like I'm a professional game designer when I do that. It's not like I'm just trying to run a Kickstarter and trying to figure it out myself. You know what I mean? Like some external entity is saying, yeah, we like this thing that you're doing. And just like a fiction writer would, we're going to run the Kickstarter. We're going to pay you for your words effectively in advance, right? From the total monies. And then once all production costs are paid for, which should be covered by the Kickstarter if all goes as planned, right? And once we start selling copies, you're going to get a percentage of royalties on the back end. Like money up front, royalties on the back. You do that enough times, and that looks something like a career.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, and that's, I guess, so we started, this all started with talking about what doing this as a career looks like. I think that's what I want it to look like. Like that would be ideal, is to be able to, and even if the company doesn't want to provide like all of the support up front, the way that Encoded has, or the way that Galileo is going to be doing, like because like I said, I can work on 2 projects pretty sustainably at once. There's another design that I'm working on called Terraform that doesn't have a publisher right now. And I'm okay with that. Like I have a co-designer who will be sort of announced, assuming we can both commit the time to this in a few months. We're just sort of working on it separately for now. And if we come together in September and we're both like, oh yeah, we each have a thing like to bring to this, then we're going to make it public and we're going to work on the thing and we're going to look for a publisher for it. But that feels good, you know, like it feels and Encoded as a stretch goal, from what I understand, one of the stretch goals is going to be, we're going to pay Tracy to write the next book.
Nice.
So I'll get a literal, actual, no fucking shit advance.
Like
right?
You're a real person.
Yeah. for work that I have not written yet. And I will write that work and get paid, and will have already been paid for those words. And then there will be another Kickstarter, and I will get royalties off of that published product, and we'll go from there. And like they're excited about it. They want to know more about the world around Midgard in Ironetta. They want to know about the other countries, and they want stuff developed for that. And I'm like, okay, cool. I really want to do that. Oh, you're going to pay me in advance for that if we get that far? Fantastic. I like this. I like this idea a lot. Because we're so ingrained to think that our work has to have value, monetary value. And we've already beaten that particular horse to death, so I'm not going to dive back into that. But from that perspective, from the perspective that we live in a society that requires amounts of capital flowing into your situation for you to keep living, to have somebody say, hey, creative person, we like what you're doing, and if everything goes as planned, we're going to give you money in advance with the expectation that you will keep doing that thing, that feels really good. Like, given that we can only chip away at the surrounding situation that makes that a necessity.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's hold on to the joy of, hey, that feels fucking awesome that someone wants you to make a thing like that.
Yeah.
That's really great.
Still a success.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, I'm really excited about Ironetta Accelerated. It feels like it like I said, like it finally needs to be what it is going to be. And it's really funny. I was talking to another game designer at Origins, and he was talking about how all of his designs have a 5-year life cycle. Like from inception to publication. That distance, there we go, get my hands lined up so it looks right on the camera. That distance is 5 years. And I was like, oh man, that seems like a long time, was my first reaction. And my second reaction was, oh shit, I started writing Ironetta in 2013.
Yeah.
So I effectively have done exactly that, right? I published a game, yeah, but I've been playtesting it for 3 years in campaigns and at conventions. I've had other people run it. I know what it is so intrinsically now that when the time came to put it into the framework that is present in IronNet Accelerated, which is the same setup as in Dresden Files Accelerated, right? It uses, I call them destinies, but the mantle setup, right? Where you've got conditions that mean certain things and you check off boxes to use power, and there's certain things you have to do to recover those boxes. You've got stunts that feed into that, and so on and so forth. It didn't take a whole lot of effort to write those destinies, because I was looking at them and I was like, well, what do the bone bonded do? Like, well, you have to have a condition to summon the bones, right? Like, cool, mark a box, ta-da, giant rises out of the ground, you go and wreck shop. But how do you recover that? I'm like, well, what needs to happen in the life of a bone bonded for you to get that power recharged? I'm like, well, the giant's dead. It probably has something that it really missed about being alive. And it's in your head all the time. Like, it's just there. I bet you have to indulge in whatever that giant wants, right? Like, if your giant wants fried chicken, you just have to go and eat an obscene amount of fried chicken.
Oh no, how terrible.
Oh no, how terrible. Except that you wake up 2 days later with grease covering your entire upper torso. Yeah. And like piles of feathers off into the corner because you had to go and get chickens and slaughter them and then fry them up. Like, it goes to that level of things. And if you do that too much, or say you use your power enough and you don't indulge the giant and you want to use it just one more time, sure, go ahead and do that. But then the giant takes over and uses your body as it wants to for a period of time. Like, that all felt really natural because those things weren't spelled out in the original Ironetta, but they were waiting in the wings, right? As I'd written a novel in the setting too, and I was like, well, having a giant in your head is pretty awful. Like, they're huge, mostly evil godlike beings in Norse myth, and one's hanging out in your brain. So like the consequences of using that power flowed a lot more naturally because I had done so much work over the last years embedding that setting into my bones. Right. And now with the new version, it had that rough start at Big Bad Con, but now it feels like the thing that I want to run. Like, it clicks with people much more easily. Right. And the fiction that is supposed to flow from having specific conditions and specific stunts set up to use those conditions flows exactly the way it's reproducible, right? Yeah. Someone who's not me can definitely pick it up and run it. The only people that, with a couple of exceptions, that I knew that ran the original Iron were people I had run it for. So they had my tone, my delivery, my presentation, my mechanical setup there to reinforce what was in the book. IronNet Accelerated is a complete book. Everything it doesn't require Fate core. It's all right there from start to finish. What's Fate? How do we do all this stuff? What's the setting? What are your destinies? It's all inclusive, and it hasn't been through proofing and final editing yet, but I'm pretty sure that someone could pick up that book and just run Ironetta, and it would be Ironetta. It would be what I want the game to be at other people's tables, which I think the first book reached in that direction. And hit it in a few specific places. But there's a lot that there weren't any teeth to any of the powers, right? There was nothing that said, oh, there's a consequence to using this power, except maybe a sentence that was like, oh, hey, don't do that too much. So having that stuff really codified and having it spelled out in IronNet Accelerated provides so much more fictional grist for the mill, because you can see what happens when the seer messes with fate too much. You can see what happens when the farmer's land is threatened. you can see what happens when the bandit is out of their most recent score and they have to actually rely on the community for real support. Because much like creative work, banditry is not a sustainable way of life without outside help.
Mm-hmm.
That seems fake.
You need a patron for your banditry. One of the things, I'm an English teacher, high school English teacher, and
I did that for a year.
Just 1 year.
It turns out that in rural schools, the mother of a child with an IEP for oppositional and defiant disorder gets real testy.
I was gonna say that's a bad combo right there.
When you tell their child to stop acting like a douchebag.
Yeah. No, I can see that.
First year teacher, first year principal.
Oh, no.
I didn't have any backup, and
that's a setup for failure right there.
Yeah, that's a tinderbox for sure.
I'm glad that I'm not doing that anymore. But yes, I interrupted. I apologize. English teacher.
It's fine. So I teach high school English, and I have a background as well in performing arts. And one of the things that I always find fascinating and that I love to talk to my students about is the idea of adaptation. When you deal with something like Shakespeare, there's so many versions of Shakespearean productions, and so you get to talk about what is it that has to stay the same. What is the core of this that has to remain the same, whether you're putting it in fake Elizabethan times or you're Baz Luhrmann and you're like, let's have a shootout on Venice Beach. Particularly with Iron Edda, I know you started with the basis in fake core, and obviously you've been tweaking that to more of an accelerated idea. And I know you've talked in the past about the idea of using Iron Edda on the basis of other rule sets. So how do you as a writer, and in the knowledge that different groups of people will be playing this and it's going to play out a different way, how do you decide what is Iron Edda and what is this rule set and what has to translate across these adaptations, what you want to always be the same regardless of who's playing and what rules they're using?
Sure. So there was a point early on when I was doing the original Kickstarter where I got real pie in the sky about what could be accomplished, right, with the stretch goals. And I don't know, you can probably see them if you go back and look at the original Kickstarter, but I had stretch goals mapped out up to over $100,000. And every $5,000 was either a setting source book written by somebody else or a new version of Iron Edda in a different rule set written by somebody else.
Right.
And there were a few things, like when I was pitching that idea to the developers who were going to take on those projects if they got unlocked, my guidelines were really, really simple. For it to be an Iron Edda game, you had to have the Bones of Dead, you had to have Ragnarok happening in some form or fashion, right? Because that's sort of the staging ground for all of this. You had to have people bonded to the Bones of Dead giants in some form or fashion. You had to have the 9 warrior clans that transcend all other societal boundaries, right? And you had to have some type of question-based setting creation so that when you start the campaign off, every group is answering a set of questions to determine their beginning situation. That was it.
Wow. Has that changed as you've worked with the game over the past few years?
Not a bit. Those things are the core principles of what makes Iron Edda Iron Edda. Only one stretch goal was actually funded. That was Paul Stefko's World of Metal and Bone, which I think is unfairly rated on DriveThruRPG, probably because I marked it as a Dungeon World supplement and not powered by the Apocalypse, which there wasn't a category for at the time. There is now, so I've since changed it. I read Paul's design, and I think it's more Norse than the original Iron Edda is. Like, he put a lot of flavor into that. But what's really interesting to me about that is it is Paul's vision of Ionetta, which is what I really wanted, right? I wanted to see what would people do with this stuff given the chance. And I had people who pitched like far future versions of it where the Dwarven destroyers are like Pacific Rim style kaiju rising up out of the ground, and you're fighting in actual bone powered fuck off mecha, right? Doing the thing. Or even further afield than that, where Ragnarok is happening in space and the bone bonded are the pilots of ships that are crafted from the bones of dead giants, right?
Pretty rad.
Yeah, some super cool ideas came out of that. And if anyone's listening to this and you're like, oh my God, I wish I could work on something like that, guess what? It's all Creative Commons licensed. And not just the game, not just the mechanics, the setting too. You can do whatever you want to with Ionetta as long as you attribute it back to me originally.
Nice.
That's it. And your next design has to also be Creative Commons and share alike. Like those are the only Creative Commons stipulations on it. So because of that, there is, I only know of one. I'm pretty sure there's only one. A guy by the name of J. Michael Bestel has been working for the last couple of years on a 13th Age adaptation that he's calling Age of Metal and Bone. And it is fucking tight. It is amazingly good. I got to play it at a Catacon back in November. And he used some of the rune-based stuff that's in 13th Age of Glorantha, which just recently came out, and he was a beta tester for that. And to do your character creation and your beginning situation questions, he does an actual rune casting at the table, where you reach into a bag and pull out a rune stone, and you get Uruz, and it is the rune of strength. And he has different questions that he asks if it is, and I don't remember the actual terms, but if it's oriented in a positive cant, a neutral or murky cant, or a negative cant, right? So if it's straight up and down, if it's sideways, or if it's upside down in the merc stave. And he looked up all the terms for all this stuff. And he has it all on cards, so you can just pull out the card and you can go, okay, so it's Laguz, the rune of water and rivers, and okay, and it's a clouded reading. Here's your question. And then your bonds in 13th Age aren't to icons like in the core setting, they're to runes. And they can shift on a daily basis. So at the beginning of every day, you do a new rune casting and you get new alignment of runes to which you are bonded, new powers you can bring into play. It's super cool, and he has done and is doing a great job with it. And that is the kind of thing I don't think I could ever ask for anything more than that as a game designer. Like, commercial success is one thing, right? Yes, ideally I'd love to be doing this. Somebody else took a set of things that I thought was cool and that I put out into the world in some form and made something totally new with it. That's stunning. Like, I can't ask for more than that. The only other thing that like comes close to feeling that good is when you have those transcendent moments at the table where everything clicks and everyone gets it and is just on point, right? Like, but those are like, those are things that can happen multiple times in the life of a game, right? You can hit that weird alchemy at unexpected times. It can just sort of occur at a con game or whenever. But to have another designer like want to take the time to take a set of things you came up with and put their own spin on it, and in so many meaningful ways do it better than you did, Like, and that's not to denigrate the original design.
Mm-hmm.
That's just to say that, like, the original design is a template. It's a set of patterns in a lot of ways. I think a lot of RPGs are. And to have someone make something that resonates in similar ways, but through totally different means,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
that's stunning. Like, that's your own little slice of immortality, right? Someone else made a thing that's gonna stick around long after I'm dust. And I really, really liked what you said, Renee, about how adaptation is so important, because that's the thing I remember doing with my freshman English class. We did Romeo and Juliet because in Ohio, at least, you read Romeo and Juliet when you're a freshman.
Yeah,
because
we do here too.
Because you're so you can say, hey, guess what? Those kids were 13 and 14. How old are you? Haha.
Yeah,
Look,
right.
be careful, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I had them do the thing that I think is so valuable, where you pick a scene and you reframe it, and you do it in a completely different context,
right?
And then you have to write your script for it. You have to put your spin on it, and you have to act it out in front of the class. Like, that's one of my favorite things to do, and I think it is because adaptation is so powerful. And it's actually, up until pretty recently, I had only done one original design of my own mechanically, and that was School Days. And that system is a system of convenience. Like, I needed a conflict resolution mechanic. Let's roll a d6. Oh, you got a 5 or you got a 5 or better? Cool, you did it. Hooray. Oh, you didn't like your result? Here's a token you can spend to do a thing, right? But until I started working on the new design for Terraform, I basically had either fiddled with some Powered by the Apocalypse stuff, or I'd written Fate. I know Fate better than any other system on the planet at this point in time. And I still feel, I think, that my biggest strength as a designer is that of an adapter or a remixer. Like, coming up with a new thing whole cloth is getting easier for me, but it's not the first thing that I think of. Iron Edit itself was directly inspired by Skyrim. Because I had a project that I was going to do. Actually, Iron Edit started out as a stretch goal for somebody else's Kickstarter. It was the first Fate Core Kickstarter to follow the Fate Core Kickstarter back in 2013. It was Apotheosis Drive X. It was a mecha Kickstarter. To my knowledge, it's not done yet. The PDF is out. The PDF is out, I believe, but I don't think anything more has happened with that. So I was going to be a stretch goal, and it was the first time I was ever going to have a chance to do this. And it's a mecha game, and they were like, "Well, you just need to. It needs to be a mecha adaptation of Fate." And I'm like, "Okay." I don't know shit about mecha. I watched Voltron when I was 4 and 5. Mm-hmm. That's about as close as I can get. But what I do know is fantasy. So I was playing a lot of Skyrim at the time. Still do play a lot of Skyrim. And I was down in the Dwemer ruins underground, right, where all the mechanical things are going on. Yeah. And I saw those big dwarven centurions. And I was like, well, what if those, like, what would happen? What would the people of Skyrim do if that shit got to the surface? Right? Like, how would they react? And I was like, well, one, they would need to be a lot bigger, because I get that the game engine has limitations of physics that make sizing things difficult, but like, that'd be pretty terrifying if those things were, say, 50 feet tall and coming for Skyhold. Yeah. So how would you fight them? I was like, oh, dragons is the easy answer, right? You could ride on the back of a dragon and that could be your mecha. Fuck that. I don't want to do that. So in Skyrim, what's the other big thing in the world? Well, it's giants. I'm like, okay, well, living giants are kind of boring, and I don't want the idea of you bonded to a living thing. What if you could summon the skeleton of a giant from the ground. And like, that was that moment where I was like, oh, hey, that's the thing. That's the thing we're going to do. So Iron Edit is an adaptation of Skyrim, and every subsequent design is an adaptation of the original 8,000 word Bones of the Earth stretch goal that I wrote for that Kickstarter, which never got published and never will, because an unfortunate side effect of things in the RPG industry, everyone makes mistakes. I did not get paid for that work. It's just how things shook out. And at the point in time, because it was Creative Commons licensed, so I could use my own idea for something else, I was like, well, this needs to be more. So I expanded it into the full version of the original Ironetta. And I was ready to publish that PDF and the print book before I'd heard any word about having been paid for the original supplement. And no shade on those publishers. Like, shit happens. I'm not like, that's water well under the bridge. But like, I contacted them and said, hey, can you pay me for this by date X? If not, I'm just going to ask that you don't publish it. And they said, okay, we'll see if we can pay you. They couldn't. So I said, all right, just please don't publish it. We've got an email trail saying you're not going to do this. So I'm going to go over here and publish my full game now. And so I did. And then because of all of the factors that went into it not being marketed or pushed the way that I had intended to, because of course I can't focus on one thing. So rather than focusing on marketing the game, I was like, well, what am I next? I've got a bunch of copies of the original game and the novel sitting in the basement, and I thought it needed another chance. So like I said, I reached out to Encoded Designs, and now it's got that chance. So the current version is a remix of a remix of a remix of a thing. And that's what all of this is. Very, very few things are designed brand new whole cloth. There's always some other influence going on, unless you're coming up with a purely unique idea, which there are those that do exist. There are syntheses of things that are just brand new ideas. Like, I think Apocalypse World is pretty close to being one of those things, even though that is a riff on other ideas that Vincent Baker had previously, right? So from his perspective, it's a remix of a lineage of remixes. But to the world, it was like this whole thing that has taken over an entire section of indie gaming, and Blades in the Dark wouldn't exist if Apocalypse World had never been written, right? Like, John Harper might have had those ideas from some other place, but they wouldn't have come in the form that they came without Apocalypse World. By the same token, Fate Core, which is a remix of a remix of a remix, because it went the original Fate system, then Spirit of the Century, and then Fate Core, with Dresden Files being this little off slant, right? Fate Core wouldn't be what it is without Apocalypse World, because there was no success at a cost in Fate Core until Fate Core. And I can't imagine playing Fate without success at a cost. Like, it's the juiciest part of the system for me. You can always fail forward.
Yeah.
Please fuck up my character. Let's go. Like, so yeah, it's interesting. Like, everything has a lineage, everything has a past. Valkyries, the new game that I'm working on, is basically just like Blades in the Dark is John's love letter to Dishonored, right? In a lot of ways, Valkyries is my love letter to the Borderlands games.
Oh, nice.
Because
I just, that was kind of an epiphany that I'd never considered before, and I'm like, that works a lot. I did not put those two things together.
Weird magical realm, whale oil, you're confined to a city. Yeah, no, as soon as I saw Blades in the Dark for the first time, when I saw the Kickstarter, I was like, this is Dishonored the RPG. This is so fucking cool. And I know it's more than that. Like, John had the Ghostline stuff well before Blades became a thing, and well before Dishonored was a thing. But like, I can see some of the DNA there. Well, in the same way that Will Hindmarch's Project Dark is his love letter to the Thief video games.
Yeah.
So like I love I cannot give enough words to it. I love Borderlands 2. It is one of my favorite games. It has some unbelievably problematic content. It was 2013. How can you do that? Like I will not play the entire Sir Hammerlock DLC at this point in time.
Yeah, that's right.
I played through it when it first came out, and I was a little bit squicked out by it, but I didn't quite get why, because I didn't understand a lot of the things I understand now.
Right.
I did a playthrough of it. I actually I streamed it on Twitch. I think it was last year. I did a playthrough of it, and I started to play that DLC, and I got to the first set of enemies, which, by the way, the only humanoid enemies that you fight in that DLC are also the only dark-skinned toons in the entire franchise. And their names, the name of the enemy in the game is Adjective Savage.
Oh yeah.
So I don't do. I'm not doing that anymore. Like that. I'm just going to skip all that content. And Tiny Tina is also extremely problematic to me. She's a very well written character. She also is a 13-year-old white girl who talks black.
Yeah.
And there was a big furor over her when that game came out. And 2K got a lot of Gearbox, and 2K got a lot of shit for like having that almost a parody of a black person in the game in the form of a small white girl. And however you feel about that, I feel a particular way, and that one bums me out because she is a funny character. She is given a lot of the best one-liners in the entire game. She makes a really good cameo in the Torg DLC, and the finalization of the story, and like the most emotionally moving part of that entire game, and also a love letter to D&D, is her Assault on Dragon's Keep DLC, where you play through the whole thing and she can't accept that Roland is dead, and it fucking kills me. It tears me up. But aside from that stuff, I felt the need to acknowledge all the problematic things in my fave. The method by which the narrative is delivered in that game is so well written. You don't need to meet Handsome Jack in person to begin to hate him, because of the way the Echo Net works, and because of the way that everyone can sort of see everyone else in the world at any point in time, because that's not creepy. But like it's paced really well. The environment design is really good. It's a game that really clicks for me. I have well over 1,000 hours put into it at this point in time. Since I have 1,000 hours on it in Steam, and I currently play it on my PS4.
That's fair.
So if that gives you an idea of where things are with it. And it's a game that it's like Skyrim. It's a game that is just a comfortable place for me. It's a comfortable world to go to. It's a world whose rules, as fucked up and dystopic as they are, make sense to me. Right. And that's I play video games for escapist reasons like that. Like I want a certain level of control over my experience. It's why I'm always a stealth archer when I play Skyrim, because it gives me that pairing gets so ridiculously powerful as the game goes on. It gives me ultimate control over every situation that I walk into. Like, and I don't play on master difficulty. I don't have any. That's not fun for me, you know. But like Borderlands is just one of those games that has stuck with me. The pre-sequel, not as much, but if it had been the game to actually come out first, it would have been lauded and heaped with praise, because it is a very good game. It is not what Borderlands 2 is. And one of the big problems with it, the pacing is good, the story is fine. The environments are so unutterably large and
huge.
difficult to traverse in so many meaningful ways that it feels like the developers did that because the engine could handle it.
Yeah.
And they didn't take into consideration how tedious it is to run across so many spaces because there are so many vehicle-free zones in that game.
Right.
That
really kills your momentum.
It does.
The cool thing.
So when I actually just finished playing through the pre-sequel again yesterday, and I started playing it through ostensibly for Valkyries. I wanted to give it another shot anyway. That's Valkyries has been my excuse for playing more Borderlands. I don't really need to fabricate one. I just want to play Borderlands.
Works.
Yeah, but because Valkyries is going to theoretically have multiple planets in it and multiple setups that are like Pandora, right? Like a bunch of Pandoras where here you go, here's the situation, here's how you can interact with it. Think like how Firefly lands on a planet and here's their deal, right? That's kind of that vibe too. Even though the reasons for it are because it was developed by 2K Australia and not by the regular 2K team, and so it's a completely different design team and set of voice actors and all that stuff. It's the only view of another planet that's not Pandora that we have in the Borderlands franchise as of now. There's not even a strong hint. There's massive foreshadowing at the end of Borderlands 2 that there are a shit ton of other planets with vaults on them. And it's echoed in Borderlands, the pre-sequel, when you go to the final vault and you're looking at the same vault symbols and the planets and everything. I'm sorry, the game came out in 2013. I'm not going to tag for spoilers for this if anyone's watching and hasn't played it yet. So because of that, because I wanted to have a different perspective, Elpis is the closest I can get to that in that world. Because even Tales from the Borderlands, it's still on Pandora, right? And it's another take on things. You get to see more of life on Pandora, which is really valuable to me as someone who wants to like delve into some of that stuff in an RPG. But Elpis is still another space with its own culture of things. And the thing that is done so well in both of those games that I think speaks to I would love to have 5 uninterrupted hours with Mikey Newman to talk about Borderlands lore, because I am positive that the writing team for Gearbox has sheafs of stuff that never made it into the game. And the reason that I think that is because of the graffiti that the bandits put on everything. It's one way in Borderlands 2 and it's another way in the pre-sequel. But it all hints at something bigger than the bandits totally fucking their psyches, right? And again, there are game design things like, sure, we don't want to make that many models predictable way, so we have to have them all sort of do the same kinds of things, but they go deeper than that. And the Bloodshot stronghold in Borderlands 2, you have to it's where you first go out to Ellie, you have to get the fucked up truck to be able to drive into it. You fight Big Ma on the outside, right? And it's the half flooded dam that you have to walk your way through to get to Roland has been captured by them, right? Yeah. Throughout that entire compound, before you get to the outside portion where you're chasing after Roland, the Bloodshot eye iconography is so King Crimson, Stephen King, The Stand, the red glowing eye, the little things that are on the walls here and there, the ways in which these ostensibly people who were just normal people at one point in time, because Patricia Tannis has a couple of echo log recorder things that you find that hint at them. That Doll completely came in and fucked the planet over. Like she said, we're all broken because of them. Like, it's not just that. It's not just that Doll left them on the planet. Something deeper has gotten into the people of Pandora. In the pre-sequel, there's an entire thing in the veins, near the veins of Helios, where there are infected Hyperion workers. And it is a little throwaway quest line. Like you have to go through there for, story reason to, actually get to the Eye of Helios. And Tacitor, Jack's former boss, has you run back through there. But if you listen to the voice lines that they're all given, right, that all the Boyles are given, they're talking about the worm is inside of me. I can hear it singing to me. Like, it's very Lovecraftian, cosmic horror has infected my brain sort of thing. And I get a lot of that same vibe from the Iridians and all the vault shit that's left on Pandora. And I get it. Like, for a lot of people, it's a shooter with a cool story, but somehow it has gotten, like, I'm picking apart the lore of Pandora from like the few references that I have, because it's not, if it is some grand cosmic horror, right? If the Iridians had locked all this power away, as they obviously did with things called the Destroyer and the Warrior and things of that nature, like, they're up to some shit. They also disappeared, ostensibly. You don't see any of them in Borderlands 2 at all. When you were fighting them at the end of the first Borderlands, you see them in the pre-sequel, and one comes in at the very end to be like, no, you can't kill her. You're going to need all the Vault Hunter to get. Cut to credits. Which they needed to give that beat like 2 more seconds to land before they cut to the credits. It's so frustrating to me that they didn't. Anyway, but if there is that, like, there's knowledge humans aren't meant to possess sort of thing, which is what corrupts Jack at the end of the pre-sequel and why all of Borderlands 2 happens, and where the sirens get their power from, and all of that shit. There are nods to mythos-like things of unknowable beings causing, wreaking havoc on humanity, but it's done in such a subtle way that, again, speaks to the constraints of the game. They're called psychos because we wanted to have a fun character for the front of the box. Fine. But I'm convinced that there's more to it. And I am, unfortunately, I really, really, really hope that if and when Borderlands 3 comes out, I am not massively disappointed by it, because I know that Mikey Newman is not working for Gearbox anymore. And I know that he was a huge influence on the first 2 games, and even into the pre-sequel. Scooter's going to have a different voice actor. Like,
that is
Mikey,
like the
Mikey
worst
Scooter
thing ever. I know. I just I hate to think about that, because Scooter is by far and away my favorite character.
Right.
I love Scooter.
And I do too, with a few hitches and problematic content caveats. The mission where you're going to do a poem for him, and his suitor shoots herself in the head because of it.
Yeah.
Turns my damn stomach. But you're right. Scooter is supremely compelling. Actually, that entire family, Scooter, Moxie, and Ellie. Moxie is a hugely empowering character. She is a sex worker who is completely comfortable in herself and doesn't give any fucks what anyone thinks of her, and has real, genuine emotional moments when it's warranted. Like, acknowledges that she's putting on an act, but likes putting on the act, so who cares? Like, there's so many good things about that game. I really hope that 3 doesn't let me down. I tend to not try and read a whole lot about games that are coming out of franchises that I love. Like, when Fallout 4 was coming out, I didn't read anything. because I just wanted to buy it and enjoy it. I don't know that I'll be able to stop myself reading every single rumor about Borderlands 3 because it's too much. I'm in too deep.
That's fair. Okay, so we've been going for about half an hour, or not half an hour, hour and a half.
Yeah.
Let's say we take a quick 5-minute bathroom and water break, and we'll be
Yeah.
back in just a few minutes.
Sounds good.
jeez. What happened? And we have audio back. So, hey, we are back, everybody. Thank you for sticking around for the second half of our interview. Second segment. I don't know. I'm bad at fractions, especially since we don't know where the end.
Some as to yet be determined percentage portion of the interview.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The bar is filling to the right, and eventually we will. Yeah.
I guess one question that I want to restart us off with is one of our big pushes, kind of since our inception, but especially the past year or two, since I feel like the world needs it, is for more inclusivity and more welcoming spaces for anybody who's not a Nazi. I like to put that in there because someone's like, "You allow Nazis in here?"
Important caveat for sure.
So, what do you feel like RPGs in general, or like we specifically as a podcast, could do to make gaming more inclusive, accepting and open-minded?
So I think getting old white men to shut up is probably too pat of an answer.
It's pretty good.
Though it's not a bad idea. And in a lot of ways, though I am genderqueer and don't identify as male, I have a lot of socialized behaviors that take a lot of unlearning to deal with. A lot of societal privilege is afforded me because of the way that I look. I mean, I'm 6'5" when I'm standing. Like, I'm a tall, white, mostly male presenting person. Like, yes, I have started painting my nails when I'm out in the world, but so far all that's really gotten me is an older woman at work last night saying to me, "I don't like that color on you." And when I ran that story past my fiance, she was like, "Welcome to being femme in the world. Other women are just going to judge you." And I was like, "Oh, okay, now I know that's a thing." So the thing that's coming to mind is a complete tautology, but hopefully I can unpack it into something useful, because the only thing I can think of initially is the way to have more inclusivity is to be more inclusive, right? And people get really worked up by those terms. Mostly straight white dudes get really worked up by those terms, to be completely blunt about it, because there is this idea when you are raised as someone for whom the world is effectively on easy mode, regardless of your personal circumstances and how difficult they may or may not be, because context does matter. But I, for example, was the smart kid, right? The school, by and large, aside from math, came pretty easily to me. I grew up in a small town about 45 minutes north of Columbus, Ohio. So I had a very sheltered is not the right word for it, but like I didn't have a lot of exposure to people who didn't look like me or think like me or anything. And life, aside from bullying in high school, because I think high school just contains that, especially when you're the son of the high school English teacher, and you have been into books for so long that you can remember a teacher's aide in elementary school yelling at you for reading on the playground instead of running around, and generally being awkward and not quite knowing what to do with yourself, right? Like I had all that stuff in high school, but beyond all of that, like looking back at it, I was never in a position where I had to make a whole lot of decisions for myself or have a whole lot of independent thought. I don't know if this is as true anymore, but by nature, I am a follower. Not having to think for myself is a very comfortable place until I get so far afield from things that I then find out are core beliefs to me that there's the big elastic snapback and I rebel against it. But like, I didn't have to come up with political opinions to make my way through life. I didn't have to critically examine the things that I consumed media-wise. I was never without representation when I would watch a movie or play a video game, or read a book or listen to music or anything. So when all of those things are things that have been true for you for so long, if you are not actively working to realize that the world is a larger place than you had chosen to believe, if you are not actively working to expand your horizons and realize that there are people who whose lives are so vastly different from yours and whose lived experiences are so different from yours as to be alien to you when first encountered. If you don't do that work, then hearing someone say, we need space in our games for blah. Fill in the blank with whatever blah is. Maybe it is more Black people or more Asian people or, more Inuits or other indigenous peoples, or it's people who are whose gender doesn't match yours, or whose gender doesn't match what they were assigned at birth, or for whom gender is a complete fuckball of I don't even know what, because it's all a social construct anyway. So I identify as a unicorn this week, and next week it's going to be a gargoyle, because cool, that's fine. Those things are alien and they don't make sense because you've been conditioned to think that the world just operates a certain way. Hearing that can make you feel like someone is trying to take space away from you because they're not making the thing that is explicitly for you, when so much of the world has been for you in so many ways for so many years. And I still run into that shit in my own brain at times. Like, as much as I try to be mindful and to learn and to keep doing things to invite more people to the table and to make sure that there are spaces where anybody can feel comfortable and see themselves reflected in the media that they're engaging with in tabletop games, there are still moments where I will hear something from a group that, along whatever axis we're discussing, is a minority, and I'll go, well, why do you need that? And then, like, record scratch, and I go, oh, it doesn't matter if I don't know why you need that. You're telling me you need this thing, so I'm going to do my best to help you get this thing. Yeah. That I've come that far in my journey to wokeness, as it were, to put it in very crude terms, and hopefully not appropriative terms. So from the perspective of someone who was socialized to, and not socialized with an agenda behind it, but just by dint of having been raised as a boy in rural Ohio. From that perspective, I get the anger or the confusion. Well, because it starts as confusion, right? Because if the people who are having these reactions are anything like I was, there is a whole lot of nothingness internally when it comes to self-identity. Like real self-identity. A lot of identity in gaming circles is constructed from the properties with which we identify. So I'm a gamer. That means a thing to me, right? And because most games, say video, by and large, feature straight white male protagonists, just as sort of your bog standard default option. When faced with the idea that somebody else needs something different, because identity is so intrinsically linked to the property and not to any actual sense of self or self-worth, to hear that feels like an attack. It is, I feel, as someone who was, just for background to this statement, was raised United Methodist, had a real strong run of 5 years or so of evangelical bullshit, was then subsequently 2 weeks away from being confirmed in the Catholic Church because romantic relationships are weird, and so is my brain, to someone who is now a professed agnostic / pantheist, is about as close as I can come to any formalized set of religious beliefs. That same attack on identity is why I think evangelical Christianity reacts the way that it does to things that are not of their world. Because for me, and possibly for others who were like me, faith in something bigger than me or the tenets of that thing brought along with it a lack of willingness to do self-identification. Like, why do I need to examine myself? I know that I'm sinful and broken. Like, this is a thing the church has taught me.
Yeah.
God will fix that. So I just need to, like, maybe not be as sinful and broken tomorrow as I was the day before. But ultimately, it's all going to get wiped away by someone else, some massive being. So I didn't do a lot of self-examination. I didn't do a lot of work to build myself up. And for me, ultimately, that resulted in the beginnings of a weird mental complex that I think could have unchecked led down the road to sociopathy, where like people around me were inputs, not actual people. Like they were variables for me to deal with. And if things weren't going the way I expected them to, then my brain would glitch out and I would get weird. I didn't know how to deal with my emotions or anything. I'm a lot better than I used to be in all of those ways. But I think there are things in my experience that I see reflected in other people. So with all that having been said, at its core, to hear a request from someone whose background is not yours, whose life experiences are so vastly different from yours, to hear them say, this is a thing that I need in my life because my life has been one that has not been privileged, and to react to that, to let your initial confusion morph into anger so virulent that it causes harassment at conventions or on the street, that it leads to bullshit like Gamergate or whatever the fuck D&D Gate is supposed to be. If that is where things go, you can fuck the fuck right out of my hobby. I don't want you around. I have sympathy for you because I come from a similar place. If you want to have an actual conversation and learn some things, I will do my level best to help you. If someone comes into my stream because of something like, well, D&D Gate, someone did. I retweeted a thing, or commented on it, someone came in, and I had a back and forth with them for about 3 or 4 tweets, right? I will give someone a chance to show me their asshole, right? And then if they choose to, I'm going to block them and move on.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to show the world your ass, hey, that's on you. I'm going to try, if I have the ability on a given day, right, or the energy or whatever, on a given day to engage with a person like that and maybe help them consider another point of view, I'll do it. If it escalates to a point where I'm talking to a brick wall, and that could take 1 tweet or 20, who knows? Because Twitter is where most of this stuff happens for me. Then I'm going to block and move on. But I think that, and again, it's mainly straight white dudes that do this, but everybody has blind spots when it comes to other people's lived experience. You can be the most empathetic person in the world, and there's somebody out there with whom you're going to trip up, right? Because what they're saying, their valid experiences just don't compute. Your brain's going to log jam. Something stupid's going to come out of your mouth, right? And you're going to have to apologize, or hopefully not double down on it, right? Hopefully you're wired to try and choose to learn from things. But people just need to be okay with change happening, right? To be okay with people who haven't had a voice getting one. It doesn't mean you have less of a voice. Like, there are a lot of projects out there that the top line of the submission guidelines say we prefer people of color, queer, non-binary, trans folks, whatever it is, right? We want diversity in our work. And in a lot of ways, regardless of my gender identity, that's not me, right?
Mm-hmm.
The realization of actually being genderqueer is something that is it's something that I had thought for a while, but it sort of like is an actual active reality of my life right now in a way that it has not been previously. Mm-hmm. And even still, if I see a submission line like that, I'm gonna pump my own brakes before I, would throw my name in the hat. Not because I don't want the work, not because I don't think I could do the work or that I could not do the work well, but because there are other people who need to have their voices heard more than me. I can say whatever I want to on Twitter. I can publish my own games. I can do all of the things that like straight white dudes tell people of color to do all the time. Oh, you don't like this space? Well, go. Okay, well, fine. As a formerly straight, white formerly dude, I can make my own stuff. I have a platform of sorts, right? From a business perspective, do I want other freelance work? Yeah, that'd be great. Are there people who need it more than I do who can offer more valuable perspectives than me? Definitely. And I think stepping away from the entitled standpoint of, well, I can do whatever I put my mind to, because even though that's a very wonderful sentiment to hear when you're 6 or 7, for me, it was poisonous, because it led me to think, oh, well, I can do whatever. Like, I can figure out how to do this. I have limitations. Everybody does. I don't need to walk around thinking that I can like write RPGs and fiction. Oh, and maybe do some music on the side. And like, no, it's the same problem we were talking about in the first half. It's too many things. It's the piling on of stuff. Like, I need to, as a person, focus down and figure out how to do the things I'm actually good at and reinforce the things I'm bad at when I have a chance to, but not assume I can just do the things I'm bad at. And I just wish that people who react so badly when they hear cries for inclusion and diversity, I wish they would take a step back, 3 steps back, maybe 10, and not feel like that call is an attack on who they are as a person, because it's not. That's self-centered bullshit, because it's not about you. It's not. And I struggle with that maybe the hardest of all. I like to make everything about myself. This podcast is like a drug for me. You are just letting me talk. This is, I mean,
first taste is free.
I could do this shit all day. I'm just going to let that one pass. But when someone says, I want more diversity in games, companies need to hire people from more diverse backgrounds so their voices can be heard and the threads of their influence can be felt through the products that we consume. Elves in Magic the Gathering can have a neutral gender that's not male or female. Like, that just needs to be okay. That doesn't need to make you feel like someone's coming for you. This is a space we all share. And to boil it down real far, if you're not willing to share, then you can get the hell out of my sandbox. Like, you can do the thing that you have told marginalized people for so long, and you can go make your own thing. And I think we see that happening in some ways in some parts of the community.
Mm-hmm.
And it's turning into little festering pustules of outrage because they are going to make their own thing, and it's not getting the attention or recognition that they want because it's like an entitled version of a fantasy heartbreaker RPG. Do you guys, y'all know that term? The fantasy heartbreaker?
Mm-hmm.
So imagine the person who played D&D and was like, oh man, I don't like these things about this game. And they sit in their basement for 10 years and they write their D&D, right? They write the thing that's going to fix gaming. And it's a bloated mess of ridiculousness that doesn't function as an actual game because it's not geared to engage with other people.
Mm-hmm.
It's geared to be the self-satisfied, masturbatory ridiculousness of one dissatisfied person.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a fantasy heartbreaker.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine that kind of thing is what's happening in other parts of the community where it's like, well, no, I'm going to write my own game with blackjack and hookers, right? It's Bender running off into the corner and then just being by himself and not getting why he's still unhappy. You know?
Yeah.
And it makes me sad. But it doesn't make me sad enough to suspend my belief that safe spaces need to be protected. Right? Like you said at the beginning of this, Aaron, everyone's welcome unless you're a Nazi. Like, that seems like a pretty simple fucking rule to follow.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's welcome unless you're a Nazi. That's a nice, clean division, right? People take umbrage at that statement right now. Like, what's so bad about Nazis? Hold on, right? Like, there was, I saw a thing on Twitter today that a state representative won't recant his having retweeted a neo-Nazi because he said that even though that person is a neo-Nazi, I still agree with what they're saying. I'm agreeing with the statement, not the person.
It's the same.
It is the same. Like, and I get that everyone is problematic. Your fave is problematic, right? No one does this thing perfectly. And there are acceptable separations between art and artist. Mm-hmm. You know, there have to be at some level, because if you disavowed everyone who didn't live up to an unattainable standard and you didn't consume any media that was not made in the most principled way you can think of, you would watch nothing. Right? Mm-hmm. Because you can look at any single person and you can find something that'll make you go, well, shit, maybe I shouldn't. But like, that needs to be an ongoing conversation you have with yourself. That separation of art and artist needs to be something you continually review. It's not a set it and forget it process. This is not your Ronco rotisserie machine. The turkey's not just done after 3 hours. You might have to check on it a few times. So, and that's I'm getting more comfortable with that as a person, but I tend to view things in very black and white terms. I'm working very hard to become more comfortable with shades of gray and with uncertainty and with nuance, because I'm a very literal, very blunt kind of person. So like, when I see, well, like the shit with the guy who was going to be the guest of honor with Origins, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Origins is my home convention. It takes me 10 minutes to drive to the convention center where that happens. every year. I see some of my favorite people in the industry at that convention. When his name was announced and I went, oh, it's the Sad Puppies guy, I was prepared to not attend the convention. And I wasn't going to ask anybody else to do that. But I really would have looked sideways at people who did choose to, that I didn't already know and trust. You know what I mean? And that's a weird calculus to have to do, because I would have had friends going to that convention. And if I didn't know them terribly well, I would have been kind of like, and it's tough. It's so tough.
Right.
And I was so relieved when they pulled his name 2.5 hours later. I was like, okay, oh God, I don't have to do that thing. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, while you were talking about that, I was actually thinking about that whole thing with the Hugos and the Sad Puppies, and just the idea that for me, the line is often at their internal ideology and philosophy significantly affects the tone and tenor of their work. You know, which kind of goes back to the retweeting of the neo-Nazi. Like, this statement can't be divorced from the philosophy behind it. You just you can't. And that's one of those things.
Like a lot of political ads, you know, at the end, it's I'm candidate for office and I approve this message. That's what a retweet is. Like,
right.
No.
I don't buy the line that retweets are not endorsements anymore.
They are. Like, when I retweet something, I'm basically saying, whether I add a comment or not, this is a thing that I agree with and have said it if they hadn't said it first.
Yeah, unless you retweet and specifically say, hey, I think this is a really bad and toxic idea, and I will, in the coming thread, you know, go point by point and illustrate why we don't need to have a rebellion and make our own Star Wars movie.
Right.
I was thinking about that
too. Well, and yeah, so like, all of those decisions are things that people need to make for themselves. And sort of circling back around to what we can do to make spaces more inclusive is, I think we're still very unfortunately at early stages when it comes to a lot of this stuff. We're like, we need to take organizations like Origins and hold their feet to the fire a little bit if they invite a guest of honor who's a toxic bag of dicks. Like that to me, in my journey of understanding all of this stuff and trying to be a better person who can actively help make the world a better place, that seems like basic principles now. There are people in the world for whom that is not true. Some by dint of lack of experience, some by dint of lack of desire to learn or accept that things can be different. So I think things like that are important. I think believing victims when they say something bad has happened to me and I don't feel comfortable in this space because of this person. I think the victims should be believed, and inquiries need to be made by whatever channels you make inquiries. And if you choose to still have someone associate with you, there needs to be a statement to that effect. So like 2 examples are coming to mind right now. Last night, Jessica Price retweeted, she used to work at Paizo, she works for ArenaNet now, retweeted something about a guest of honor for GameholeCon. And I paused for a few moments before I retweeted it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to look into this a little bit. I trust, like, Jessica is not a person who does this stuff without cause, right? And I did a little bit of looking into the person. I was like, okay, yeah, no, that's probably not a great idea to have them as a guest of honor at this convention that's growing in prestige and is really connected to the D&D community. So I'm going to, add my voice to this. I have no idea what GameholeCon's review process for these kinds of things is, what actions they're going to take. And the fact that I don't know that right away when I know so many people who are going to that is a bit of a red flag for me, right? People have raised a concern. It needs to be addressed. What are you doing to ascertain that your event is safe for everybody? In contrast to that, there were a couple of instances where one of the host of one of the podcasts on the One Shot Network was accused of sexual harassment. And the work that James D'Amato and Kat Cool did to research everything, the transparency with which they did that, and the thoroughness and the swiftness and the amount of seriousness with which they took that situation gave me faith that at the end of that entire review process, where they outlined literally every, with advice from lawyers, getting phone records from the accused and location data from his phone to prove he could not have been in the spot where the alleged event took place. Like, they did the fucking work.
Yeah.
So when they come back at the end of that process and say, we have full faith in this person, I'm like, cool, I'm good. Like, victims need to be believed. Claims need to be investigated. And this stuff needs to be taken seriously. The way that One Shot handled that was exemplary.
Right.
And that's the level of seriousness, of weight, that I would love to see every organization give to issues like this. Whether it's harassment, whether it's just making more safe spaces. And granted, the thing with Origins and Larry Correia, like, Origins is a convention that fails to get rooms for its games for GMs when they've signed up for things. There are a lot of problems with the organizational structure of that convention. But at the same time, somebody internally had to say, oh yeah, Larry Correia is a great idea as a guest of honor. How you do not vet that blows my damn mind.
Yep.
I don't get it. That seems like basic homework to me.
Yeah. I think it kind of goes back to some of the other things and what you've talked about, having a group of people, the people who are creating this convention or this RPG or this video game or whatever. If they're all middle-aged white men, that won't even necessarily be in their range of vision. It's not going to occur to them because their experience is all this. And so without a lack of diversity, you don't have someone else sitting at the table going, well, wait a second.
Mm-hmm.
What about all this over here? Like, that may not affect you, but it's going to affect all these people who want to attend, you know?
Yeah.
It's just a huge blind spot because you don't have a diversity of representation.
Mm-hmm. So, for example, I mentioned Valkyries. We talked a lot about Borderlands, right? So it's going to be a game that's based on Fate, but everything's going to be card-based. All your gear and everything, your stunts will be hot swappable, just like the gear in Borderlands. But one of the things that Galileo Games and I have decided to do with it is that, much like a video game, out of the box, you're going to get, like, the Sentinel archetype, right, is a person with a name. You're going to be playing Malia the Sentinel, right? That, and obviously you can make your own characters, but like prepackaged, the Sentinel is a particular person. You know, the Ranger archetype is a particular person in the setting. All of those people are going to be women, trans, or non-binary.
Nice.
Every single one of them. And the overwhelming majority of them are going to be color.
Nice.
What that's going to mean for me, because I'm going to write a brief little blurb of their background. They're going to have a high concept and a trouble and some stats. Like, that's going to be the stuff for that character, other than like little in-fiction things, you know, throughout the book. I'm probably going to need diversity and sensitivity readers for that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I am not any of those things, aside from non-binary. You know, and even that, like, still socialized to be a privileged white dude, so maybe I better check myself. Because, like, it's important. If I'm going to work to have that representation in a game that I'm writing, then I need to make sure that it's not damaging representation. It needs to be helpful representation. Like, I need to make sure that I don't stumble into a ridiculous stereotype when I have an Asian character on the table. Like, that seems basic to me now, but you're completely right about what you said, Renee. It's out of the field of vision of so many people for whom life has just been a certain way for so long. And I think that in general, in creative fields, we are seeing ripples being made, noticeable ripples, by people of color, by people of marginalized backgrounds of any type, speaking up and saying, no, you need to do better. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the idea of getting more voices feeding into things that are being made is becoming more and more prevalent. I think that media that's being produced that does not do that more and more often is sort of like clunking with people instead of resonating. I think that work is being done and being done effectively. I think it is going to take longer for it to happen in industries where the consumer base is small, like RPGs.
Yeah.
Because as much as this is my passion, I'm reminded regularly how small this industry is. Like, even compared to fiction, which is small, RPGs are tiny. Like, I personally know, just from 5 years of going to conventions and doing game design and talking about, I know like some of the top design minds in the industry. It's really cool that I have that opportunity to do so. It also means this is a tiny fucking industry, you know? And I want there to be more people in it. I want there to be more people making games. I want there to be people making games that I will look at it and go, I have no idea what the fuck that game is. It is not for me in the slightest, but I'm really glad that you made it.
Yeah.
Because here's the other thing. I think as people expand their ideas of what fun can be and what fun can look like and what is interesting to them, you can then enjoy a more diverse and wider array of things. And how is that not a good idea? You know, like 5 years ago, the idea of a variant of Dread, or a game that started with its roots in Dread, that is about two people who have a forbidden love and can't consummate it for whatever reason, I would have looked at that game and gone, why the fuck would anyone make that? And now I'm like, can I play StarCrossed sometime? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's, and it takes a lot of energy to hate something. It takes a lot of active mental work to have blind spots to things, unless the rest of your life just insulates you from having to worry about that shit. It is so much easier to like enjoy things and to not worry about what other people are going to think when you do express enjoyment of something. Because I think the more people that do that, the more people that are just like, here's this thing that I love, and are just passionate about the things that they really, really enjoy. And the more that people who try and cut that down are told to be quiet, or are told that the way you're approaching this is not acceptable behavior, the more you're going to have people enjoying things, because there's less fear of it. You know, I don't think there should be such a thing as guilty pleasures. They're just things that you like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We went out to dinner tonight, a place about a half-hour drive away, and my fiance, her brother, and I put on a like best of the 90s Spotify playlist, and like sung along to the New Radicals and the Flies and oh good lord, just so many bands that like you hear the song and you're like, objectively, I know this is not a good song. However, this is the story of a girl. Like, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Because why get worked up about that? Why you're singing in your car? No one cares.
Right.
I mean, now I've told everyone who's watching this, but
Whatever.
my first album that I ever bought on cassette myself was Ace of Base's The Sign. My first CD that I ever bought was Ace of Base's The Sign.
My first one was Chumbawamba.
Tub Thumping, yes.
Oh, nice.
That was within my first 10, I think. But like that simple little thing, because people don't do a lot of work in crafting their own identities as people, or aren't taught to, because this is not just a thing that's on people alone. There's a lot of life that happens before you get to a point where you're like, oh shit, I'm hollow inside. You know, it takes a lot of work to get there. So there's a level of sympathy that I will always have for someone who is struggling with that, because I continue to struggle with it. I'm not a fan of many things necessarily, or I didn't think I was, right? But like, I gushed about Borderlands for a solid 45 minutes. I love the Neo Scum podcast to the point that I am statting up versions of their characters in Fate because I know Fate and I made a Neo Scum themed Fate character sheet for it. Like, I've made fan art for the first time ever.
That's when you know you're in.
Yeah, and like in years past, I would have been ashamed of that level of love for something, because I didn't have the emotional mechanisms to process enjoying things, or the level of security in who I am as a person to deal with someone not understanding why I love something.
I feel like, for me at least, like, coming out as trans really made me, I think, more willing to kind of be open about the things that I'm passionate about, or my, guilty pleasures, just because, like, at this point in my life, I generally don't give enough of a shit, and if you're gonna choose to hate me for something, there's probably things that are higher on the list than, like, oh, I listen to Backstreet Boys in the car.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And then the idea, in the vein of like spreading positivity and just actively liking things, one, it's empowering to see someone just like something.
Mm-hmm.
Like, one of the people, and she's going to be embarrassed if she ever hears this, but one of the people that I have been fortunate enough to encounter in the RPG space, who is just like a seemingly unassailable advocate for positivity and liking things, is Darcy Ross. She is the community manager for Monty Cook Games.
Mm-hmm.
She writes for Gnome Stew with me and a bunch of other awesome folks. Every time I have chanced to have an in-person conversation with her, I walk away from that conversation just feeling good about what we talked about. At Catacon this last November, a bunch of Gnome Stew folks went out for an evening at the bar, and we ended up speccing out a game that was a romance game about plants being cared for by their gardener in like Elizabethan or Victorian England. And it was rose bushes specifically, and you had to use sonnets. The player who played the rosebush would have to compose a sonnet for their gardener and communicate their feelings before the gardener pruned them down for the next season and cut off all of their branches. Like,
nice.
she's that kind of person who's just like, that's an interesting idea. Will you tell me about that? And like, you just want to go and you want to do. And like, I would like to strive to be someone who prompts that level of openness in other people. Like, that's laudable. That's valuable. That's the kind of thing that I think the game industry needs more of.
Yeah.
Is people. So there's the joke, right? That you go to a convention and the last thing that you want to hear is someone else's fucking character or their campaign, because everyone's got a character and everyone's got a campaign. God, I'm so over it right now. But people like Darcy and people like Brian Patterson, like I mentioned before, my creative partner, they want to hear about that shit because they want to hear about what gets people excited. You all are doing that same thing. You're letting me go on and on. We've jumped all over topics just because you want to hear me be passionate about things. And I think it is something that the weary white man cynicism needs to die in a fire, because we play games ostensibly because we're excited about what goes into them, whether that's the fiction or the crunch or some mixture of both. Like, I want to be the kind of person who is as excited to hear about someone's super optimized 4E build as they are to hear about, you know, a game of Starcrossed where people are playing a stuffed animal penguin and the tailor that is, you know, having to make it and sell it the next day or whatever, right? Like, I want to be so excited for other people's excitement.
Yeah.
And not just be tired and like, oh, why are you telling me this?
Yeah.
Like, I want to be that encouraging, because this is a very reductionist statement. There's a lot of nuance missing from what I'm about to say, but it trains off what I was just going on about. I think that if the majority of people in the RPG industry were just genuinely excited about what other people wanted to do, as long as those things are not destructive, as long as we're not talking about Nazis, then that would go a long way to helping solve some of the systemic problems we're seeing.
Agreed.
Right?
Yeah.
And like I said, a lot more goes into it than that. But I mean, man, just let other people have joy. Yeah. Give people space to have joy. Like,
yeah, like if you're at the point where someone enjoying a thing is like makes you angry, you need to reevaluate like shit.
So many things.
Exactly. And that's why that statement could be reductionist, but at the same time, dang, like let people just be happy around you. And there's a lot of brain chemistry stuff that goes into that too, and there's social anxiety, and there's all kinds of factors that at conventions or online bleed into why someone is the way they are.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, if someone, I'm not gonna repeat the thing that you just said, Aaron, and make it sound like it's my own. What you said was exactly valid. Like, you need to do some self-examination if you're just getting mad, about stuff, about people liking things.
So there's a nice rainstorm brewing up, and I think Renee's laptop is battery. So we may have to bring ourselves to a close here.
Okay.
I think this is a good note to end on.
Yeah.
I mean,
fair enough. Yeah.
So what we'll do is, if you want to give your rundown, your whole spiel, and then at the end, if you want to throw in a non-capitalist plug, do that.
Okay.
And then we'll do our outros, and then I think we'll be.
Okay, so Iron Edit Accelerated should be on Kickstarter on July 9th. I'm really excited about it. I think the goal is attainable, and I really hope that people like this new version of the game. So I hope that you keep an eye out for that. If you want decent to good RPG actual play, then the other cast is where you should go for some of that. There's Star Wars, there's Dresden Files, there's D&D, there's a lot of other Fate stuff. A Planescape game run entirely with Fate because I'm that person. And you can find all the rest of my stuff at theothertracy.com. That's TRACY. You can find me on Twitter at theothertracy. And for a non-capitalist plug, man, go listen to Neoscum. Like, it is... the characters are garbage people, but they support each other so much. It is the queer cyberpunk found family that you didn't know that you needed. Just do that. Go listen to the Neoscum podcast. I don't get anything for that.
Renee or Zach?
Sorry.
Do your brain.
Yeah, gotta fire back up here. Thanks for coming on. This has been great. I feel like I haven't contributed a whole lot, but I didn't need to. So there's a lot of talking happening. It's good. My non-capitalist plug is sleep, as it usually is. So
it's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. You nodded at all the right places, though, so you're good.
I mean, I've been paying attention. I just don't want to like talk over anybody or like jump in when I'm not needed, and I clearly was not needed tonight. So
I don't have any non-capitalist plugs today. My brain is already off.
Okay. So I guess I'll do our whole thing. We've been that D&D podcast. This has been another installment of our Improbable interview series. If you would like to check any of those out, you can go to YouTube / that D&D podcast. If you want to check out any of the other stuff we do, you can go to there's YouTube, Twitch, Patreon, Facebook, Twitter. Is all that D&D podcast. Very consistent with our generic naming. You can also go to thatdndpodcast.com, check out our archive of 4.5 years of podcast episodes now. If you are a person in the queer or indie RPG space and you would like to come on and talk, hit me up specifically on Twitter since I'm doing the producery role and booking people. I changed my Twitter handle over the break. So it is now the road virus _ It's easier than having to explain where the 3 is in there. So yeah, it's just hit us up, and my non-capitalist plug, spend some time with somebody you care about, and then instead of being distracted, if they're talking about a thing that is important to them, passionate about, phone down, distractions away, and just be engaged with this person in the thing that they are choosing to share. That's a good experience. So, once again, thank you, Zach and Renee, for coming to hang out. And Tracy, thank you for making the time to come and chat with us. And we still have a bunch of questions on this list, so we may have to get you back sometime.
Okay, thank you so much for having me on.
Not a problem at all. And for all of you at home,